I'd like to move to return from exec session.
Second.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes. Start with the pledge. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes. First up, public forum. Anybody that would like to address the board may do so at this time. Come on up.
You don't need to raise your hand.
Hi, my name's Lauren Ratley. I live at 7840 Heather Glen Drive. You all have seen me and heard from me before. To recap, for those of you who don't know why I've come in, approximately 2 years ago I asked for a dog tethering resolution to be in place in Anderson Township because in the absence of that, people may not realize state law is silent on that. So you can put a dog on a chain forever and ever again. So we do now have a resolution that states that's not permissible overnight, but I came back a couple times in writing and in person to ask about a severe weather provision. And from what I can tell, you all must have discussed it at this point and decided that's not going to be included, and so I came back in to ask you why.
Okay.
So we're talking about 16 hours is okay without any break in that, and any temperature, any weather, severe weather of any kind is not reason to act.
And if I may, I have not discussed that with the board yet. I know that you've made the request, and I've had some preliminary discussions with our law director, but it has not been brought before the board yet as far as a township administrator recommendation. And that's primarily because we have a lot of other projects that are taking higher priority at this point. I'm not saying it's not a priority, I'm just saying it's something that I haven't gotten to yet.
You actually wrote me back, Ms. Earhart, months ago and said a decision was made not to change.
You brought back in, you came back in, and I wanted to revisit that, and I have not done that yet.
Okay.
Okay?
So it's been a couple months. It's not going to overwhelm, our authorities.
Right.
It would be the outliers for sure. It would be more extreme cases, but it is, as you say, a tool, which unfortunately you need with extreme cases and behavior. So, yeah, it was just my understanding that it was discussed and not moving forward, so I wanted to inquire about that.
It is not, there's been no final decision about it, so.
Okay,
Still open. We'll still
All right.
discuss it.
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, we appreciate you coming in.
It's getting cold, and so
That
just
is,
in case
you're
I have
right.
to check, it's
Right.
snowing already, and we're getting there, so I just thought I'd check back with you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ruth?
Okay. Ruth Hardy, Anderson Oaks Drive, Cincinnati, 45255. Sometimes the trustees' meetings are sparsely attended, but that does not mean township residents are not watching. We may be watching while cooking dinner or catching the replay at a different hour when family meals and children's needs are not preempting our own availability at 6 p.m. We may be shuttling our students to and from their after-school activities and sports events, but we do watch the trustees meeting, the quasi-judicial zoning board and BZA meetings, as well as the Forest Hill School District meetings with great interest. We enjoy the monthly trustee interview and keep informed through civic programming such as candidates forums put on by the League of Women Voters. We watch this valuable programming because we know that a great community like Anderson stays that way when residents take responsibility for keeping up with what's going on in the township. We know that the success of a democratic republic depends on citizens taking their civic responsibility seriously. So I'm disheartened to learn that ACTV will be closing at the end of the year and coverage of governmental and other township events will end. My questions are, 1, Ms. Earhart, can you confirm that ACTV will be closing, and if so, are there any other options being explored for coverage of Anderson Township governmental meetings? Are there any community-based organizations we could partner with, maybe get some help? And Mr. Sievers, number 2, I know you're very successful in pursuing grants. Are you researching grant funds for the continued support of ACTV? And last, Ms. Stone, Mr. Girth, and Mr. Pappas, I believe that protecting individual freedoms is at the center of your political philosophies, and the right to know is the key at the heart of those freedoms. A failure to involve a cross-section of residents limits the effectiveness of public engagement efforts and negatively impacts the breadth and quality of ideas contributed. It can also reduce community support for final decisions. Residents may be unable to attend all the public township governmental meetings in purpose for a myriad of valid reasons. What will each of you do to help your constituents access complete coverage of Anderson Township public governmental meetings?
Thank you, Ruth. We'll appreciate the letter, and we'll get back to you.
May I have any answers from those that I've...
We'll consider all your questions, and certainly we'll discuss looking into all of it. So thanks for presenting.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Nappy. I live at 644 Watchpoint Drive. I noticed in Anderson Insights this month, there was a blurb in there about a gap in the general fund. And I had some questions related to that. I attended the public meeting in July regarding the budget, and I don't recall it coming up, so this is just to seek to understand. So a couple questions, and hopefully you can either answer them or provide a way for residents to get the questions answered. One is, what's the cause of the gap? It was pretty substantial. What was in Anderson Insights? It was about $1.2 million that was a gap in the general fund. How does the township plan to close the gap? The statement in Anderson Insights made it sound like there was a tax levy that would potentially be put forward. I don't know if that's under consideration or if cuts, I don't know if the ACTV stuff is related to that or not, but are there cuts being considered, and how can residents and property owners get more detail on this and stay informed? So I appreciate in advance any perspective that you can share.
Okay. Kathy, why don't you email, I know you've got Vicky's email, so
Katie.
why don't you email her those, and why don't, if you can respond and make sure you copy all of us on it too, so we
Yes,
can all
absolutely.
communicate it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure.
Good evening. My name's Steve Zimmerman. I live at 1761 Stonehouse Lane, and I'm here to talk about or offer my opinions about the proposal to remove a stop sign on Stonehouse Lane. I live at the corner of Stonehouse and Blackthorn, and the sign that's to be removed is at Dunview. And I don't know if you're familiar with that part of the township, but if you were to be at Stonehouse and Blackthorn and look up towards Dunview, there's a small crest in the hill right there. And so my belief is if that stop sign is removed, speed limits for cars could increase. I think it'd be more difficult for some of us who live at that end of Stonehouse to get out of our driveways safely. So for my one opinion, I'm against removing that stop sign and putting the four-way down at Heather Glen and Stonehouse. I think the way it's set up right now is adequate for that part of the community and for our area of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Steve Sievers, you did provide kind of an explanation to the residents, correct, about that process? I think you did.
We provided correspondence to all the residents within 500 feet of Stonehouse and Heather Glen, all the residents on Dunview, and all the residents up to Blackthorn, notice of staff's recommendation, which you see in the slide behind you or on your screen. This comes as a request, and this is later in the agenda, but I'm happy to delve into it now if you'd like. This comes from a request to change the intersection at Stonehouse and Heather Glen to a four-way stop. It's currently a two-way stop where only traffic on Heather Glen stops. The recommendation was to go to a four-way, which actually is probably the way it should have been to begin with, or at least a two-way the other direction. So staff's recommendation was that. It's approximately 350 feet from that intersection to Dunview and about 300 feet to Blackthorn, as you see in the slide behind you. Stop signs cannot be used as speed control devices. The fact is, when the stop sign was authorized at Dunview, on Stonehouse at Dunview in 1980, when the subdivisions were being built in that area, there were concerns about traffic and speed of traffic through that area. Since that time, parking's been eliminated on the east side of Stonehouse. So as you look out at Dunview, and I believe if you, I think the image on the right side is that intersection of Dunview and Stonehouse. There's adequate sight distance. There is a rising grade, as Mr. Zimmerman indicated, but the speed of traffic concerns is not something that we can use a stop sign to regulate, and be it that it's only 625 feet from stop sign to stop sign. If we eliminate it, that would be staff's recommendation. The other aspect we typically have is the reliance of people that others will stop at stop signs, and when you continue to have stop signs like you see on the image behind you or in other areas of the township, they just tend to get missed and run. And so the onus in this situation, if I were to point out Dunview, would be to make sure a vehicle stops currently, and if there's no stop signs there to allow that to pass. The volume of traffic, we did traffic counts on those streets because we applied for some grants to do repaving and curb work in that, and the volumes are such that we do not feel that it poses a safety threat to remove those and add signs where it really should be down at the corner. That will keep traffic from, as it currently would if you lived at the end of Stonehouse and came southbound. You could get a pretty good head of steam heading southbound, but that would be eliminated by that stop sign.
Okay.
That was the recommendation of the management team.
And Mr. Zimmerman, if you have more questions, please get with Steve. Happy to talk to you. Thanks. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Monty Hopkins. I live on Dunview Court, and I am also here as I am opposed to this change. I see three reasons. I might add a fourth now, but as Steve mentioned, as you are going northbound on Stonehouse, you are cresting a hill and your line of sight is very limited over the top of that hill. There are a lot of people, including myself, who walk dogs. There are children in the neighborhood, and if they're on the other side of that crest, the line of sight for a car even approaching at the speed limit of 25 miles an hour is limited, whereas the line of sight going downhill from Dunview is greater for that four-way, what you're calling a four-way intersection. Second reason for opposing it, as far as I see, is, well, actually, I'm just going to leave that alone. I would also like you to consider another alternative, which is on Heather Glen, where the T comes in on Sandcliff. If you see that right there on your map up above. Cars are parking on the south side of Heather Glen at the T intersection, and I know it's within 20 feet of that stop sign. When you are approaching that intersection from Heather Glen, eastbound on Heather Glen to Sandcliff, that becomes a real problem for cars trying to come into the intersection. So if you want to make a change in that neighborhood, that seems to be more expeditious. Thank you very much. Any questions for me, being a resident there? I will tell you that people do roll through the stops. Rarely, forgive me, with the exception of a few teenagers, do people completely blow through them. And removing that stop sign from Dunview probably won't change a thing, other than to give people less warning as they come over the top of the hill, should there be dogs, children, or whatever in the street. That's my experience from living there for 18 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
No, you can talk about anything. You can talk about anything. You don't have to talk about that.
Okay, well, I don't live there, so...
No, that's okay. They're just...
My name is...
Nice. That's good.
No, if I don't live there, I don't know how the traffic is. I'm Martha Bondelaine, and I'm concerned about ACTV. I've heard that it might be closing at the end of the year, and I would like to know if it is. I think it's very important because we can't all be up here at these meetings every time, except you people who have to be, you know. But it's a great record of what goes on, and it's so accessible, and I think it's important. It helps people know what's happening in our township and the processes that are going on. So will it be closed at the end of the year, or will it continue?
It is scheduled to stop.
And why is that?
Go ahead, yeah.
With regard to the relationship between Anderson Township and Anderson Community Television, that relationship will end at the end of this year. It is not clear if ACT will continue on as they are a separate not-profit organization. Their director, the president of their board, has indicated that they are trying to relocate to continue to provide service. That will not be with Anderson Township. We have yet to decide internally. We are looking at other means of providing camera coverage that would, instead of being heavily produced and edited, maybe it's a camera that sits in the back of the room and captures it. I would remind everyone that the minutes from the Board of Township Trustees meeting are all available on our website, so that is a record, as well as are the minutes from BZA and Zoning Commission. Anderson Community Television started as Anderson Union Community Television. Union Township was helping to foot the bill. Very early on, Union Township backed away. It became Anderson Community Television. This community funded the entire operation to the tune of close to $300,000 a year until a number of years ago, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago, when our general fund was significantly hit with cuts from the state. We reduced that amount to $30,000, and that is all that we have paid for them to provide service. We have also given them free rent in this building. Throughout that entire time, ACT coverage was only available to Time Warner subscribers who had a specific box. So, for example, for years I had Cincinnati Bell Direct TV. I could not watch it. People that had satellite dish or other coverage did not have access to it. So we were providing $30,000 a year for a very small segment of our population. The other thing that, in addition to the budget cuts, we had tried many years ago to run ads on ACTV to say, if you're watching this program or you watch, please call us, let us know. We did surveys at Greater Anderson Days. We put surveys in the community television offices, and honestly, if we had 36 to 60 people that said they were watching it, it was a lot. The bulk of the community, we did not get a response, and when we're looking at 45,000 residents and the cost to provide that service and the return, when we could possibly enhance our website, we could possibly have a Facebook page or other ways of communicating with our residents, we felt we would get the better bang for the buck that way. We had approached other entities to help us fund that station, other governmental agencies in this township, and there was no support. So it has been solely on this board. When I make recommendations to the trustees, and I have to look at, do we reduce a support staff person, reduce hours of our staff that work very diligently to provide services to the community, or reduce a cable TV show that has very, very limited coverage to our residents, my recommendation to the board was to reduce ACTV. There is also information we just learned of this week where the Federal Communications Commission is considering removing public access television channels because this is a nationwide situation where people are tuned in to YouTube and websites and Facebook and that sort of thing, and local cable companies are attempting to pull away from offering these community television stations. So many jurisdictions, many townships do not cover their meetings. We have been one of the few that have supported this station for years. Other communities do not do that. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but we hung on as long as we could. And when we have to look at what provides the best service to the bulk of our residents, this was the recommendation I made to the board. This decision was made by the board earlier this year. It was in the minutes. It was covered on ACTV, so I'm not sure if you've just learned of this, but this has been
Yeah, I just learned
a
of it.
while ago.
I have
Yes.
to admit, I understand the economics. I get the logic of, I understand dollars, okay?
Yeah.
And so there's no argument with that. Every time I saw it, I was seeing it on YouTube. Now, how did it get on YouTube?
We pay ACTV. They are filming right now.
And they put it on.
And they put it out there. We are looking at possibly having one of our part-time building attendants who make a pittance to park a camera in the back of the room that can record the raw footage and put that out there, rather than paying for the extensive editing and having multiple cameras. We haven't decided on that yet, but as I said, we also have the minutes of the board meetings are available for the public, and certainly after a board meeting, if anyone wants to call me or email me, I'm happy to provide whatever information. But it just, it seems like the best move when we look at all of the opportunities we have. This board is committed to transparency. In the 24 years I've been here, we are more transparent. I'm not saying that prior boards weren't, but we have more ways of communicating. The trustees are all out there communicating with people. We have Facebook. We have other methods, and we're certainly here to serve our residents.
Well, I guess I've joined the younger generation because I really liked seeing the YouTube videos. Was my favorite way to keep up. And I hope you'll keep doing those, and I certainly understand the economics of it. No arguments there whatsoever.
And I don't know if you've been to our website. We have a lot of YouTube videos that our staff created. We have firefighters, we have our public works staff, clerical staff that have created videos on how to interact with the township, and those are all on our website. We did track the Facebook and the YouTube views from ACT board, from board meetings that were on ACT's website, and we found that tens of thousands of people from Sweden and Yugoslavia and Turkey, and very few people from within the United States. So there's a lot of views, but when you dig down into the data, it's very few Anderson Township residents.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, I just hope you'll keep getting them, because I have to admit, I like the videos. I like seeing the interactions and everything. And somehow it sticks with me better. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And despite everything Ms. Earhart just said, we're not opposed to somebody funding ACTV. So if they have they're their own separate entity, they have their own board, and if somebody wants to step up and work with them to keep them going,
that's great.
That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Andrew?
Nothing. Just wanted to make sure everybody has a safe and holiday season starting a week from today. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope everyone travels safely and has an enjoyable start to the holiday season. It can be stressful. Let's remember there's a lot of people that are in need, so if you can be generous with your time and or resources, please do so. But just wish everybody a happy and safe holiday season. That's it.
And I agree. Happy Thanksgiving. The tree lighting, I think it's December 1st.
December 1st.
And it's a real tree.
It's a real tree.
Everyone,
It's not a pole.
it's a real tree.
Not a
So
pole.
come out to the tree lighting. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
Actually, it's a holiday festival, Ms. Stone.
Oh, holiday
The
festival.
tree is
sorry.
one element.
A tree is one element of the holiday festival.
As long as there's a real tree.
It's a real tree.
There is a real tree.
You're mumbling, Steve. Thank you.
Purposeful.
Thanks. I agree with all that. Ken, you're up.
Thank you. Financial reports at the end of October indicate that we're already over 100% of our revenue projections, 102%. That's not going to get much healthier because the real estate taxes are already in, but we do have some things rolling in. So we'll probably be like 5% over our projected revenues. Expenditures are at 68% as of the end of September. So that's also going to indicate probably a 5 to 6% savings on our expenditures, which has been our history. So those are looking good. We'll know more when we get to January, the regular meeting there, the final numbers, but no appropriation changes. By law, we are obligated to have a tax incentive review council meeting on all the TIF revenues we've received over the years, and that will be on December the 6th, right before our interim workshop meeting at 1:30. Will be the Tax Incentive Review Council. Our workshop meeting will be at 2. We'll also have a Records Commission meeting at that time. We'll talk about the revenues that have come in for the TIF program and the expenditures. We'll be discussing that with the school districts that are involved, Cincinnati Public Schools, Forest Hills Local School District, and Great Oaks. So I don't think we have any minutes. And also, happy Thanksgiving and great holiday for everybody.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Margaret, anything?
No report tonight.
Thank you. Good. Paul Drury.
Hi, good evening. Some good news, a good news story tonight for our department. The tree committee, at the beginning of this year, in celebration of the township's 225th anniversary, decided they wanted to leave some type of legacy with trees to honor this anniversary. So we had members of the committee design a tree grove along the 5-mile trail. Steve is showing pictures of it. This was actually during the installation, which the day it was installed it was raining, and most of the pictures it was raining. But this is located between the 5-mile trail and 5-mile road near the Clough Pike end of the trail. Yes, and there before it was a grass knoll, basically. But the tree committee selected trees that were native to this area and most likely were around 225 years ago. We will be putting a little plaque and little name tags on each of the trees so that those using the 5-mile trail can look at the trees, look at the name tags, and see. But we are very excited that this will leave a legacy and will hopefully be there in another 100 years. So that's, did you have any questions? All right, again, our tree committee put a lot of work in designing it. We had a member of the tree committee that actually drew up the plans. The committee selected the species, and then Little Miami Inc., Little Miami Landscape LLC was the installer.
Thank you. It looks great. I walk along there, so.
Great.
Saw him the other day. It looks wonderful.
Thanks, Paul. Lieutenant Guy?
I have nothing this month, thank you.
Thank you. Eric, you're up.
Public Works has nothing.
I will cover that item under administration.
Actually, you have something, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Chief Martin.
There we go.
Good evening. We have two things rolling down for one thing on the list, but we also have some good news. The first thing would be that we received the Ohio Division of EMS Priority 1 grant in the last couple of weeks, and that's for $1,800 earmarked for EMS training.
okay.
So we'll be utilizing that. Something we just learned in the last 48 hours, we also received an additional $15,000 grant from the Ohio BWC, basically dealing with fighting cancer and prevention of cancer relative to firefighters. So we'll be buying a new extractor, which is a machine that basically is a special machine that washes fire gear, gets the pollutants out of the fire gear. There's a new type of hood that's a particulate hood, and then we'll be buying gloves as well. So all good this meeting.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Vicki, you're up.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Severs has the first two items.
I do. There was discussion earlier, and I appreciate Mr. Zimmerman and Mr. Hopkins being here and The other two residents that had contacted us as well in response to that mailing, that information or those emails are in your packet, a resident on Stonehouse and on Dunview. Welcome any questions the board may have. I think it remains staff's recommendation. If there would tend to be issues, I assume we could always go back and reanalyze the situation to place the stop sign back at Dunview and Stonehouse. It's not something we take lightly. The recommendation from Mr. Hopkins with regards to the Stonehouse or to the Heather Glen intersection with Sandcliff is a good one as well. And that's something that I think we can do. Matt and Eric, it's defined as an intersection, so the prohibition of parking is something we can look at immediately with regards to that without having to do a stop sign. We can look at other ways to improve the situation and flow in that area. We have already talked about if this were to proceed forward, in addition to adding the signage on both the signs and the four-way notes, now changing that, as well as signage on Dunview noting that cross-traffic does not stop. We would also be looking to do some use of the speed trailer in that area to try to get some data and also ensure that we're not creating another problem there. But I think we remain committed to continuing to look at that area. And as you're here tonight, one thing we have not shared yet, we did apply for loan funding through the Ohio Public Works Commission to go in and begin repairing all of the sidewalks, curbs, and roadways in that area. So we're optimistic if that moves forward, we're going to be spending a lot of time in your neighborhood and can certainly look at all these matters. But again, unless there are any other comments from members of the management team, I think that it remains our recommendation at this point in time, or you can certainly table this to another meeting.
Why don't we, since they brought up a couple of good points, why don't we just have a little more discussion about it and revisit it next month?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. And are there sidewalks? There are sidewalks, right? Okay, because you talked about
And they are in desperate need of repair, and we know that. And if the loan is not successful, we are already prepared to begin going in there to get those addressed immediately. Those have been band-aided. It's a larger issue in your neighborhood, as you all know, with the presence of street trees. And so our tree committee, as Mr. Drury mentioned earlier, one of the things they talked about at their meeting, last Monday night, was the direction there, because it's either going to require additional land to go around those trees or removal of those trees. So we're going to be spending a lot of time talking with you and your neighbors about what the future of that area looks like. But do appreciate you being here this evening. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is the reason for the change?
There was a request that was submitted to us with regards to the intersection at Stonehouse and Heather Glen for a four-way stop. And whenever we go into an intersection in an area, we don't just look at that intersection. We look at the surrounding environment to understand how it plays into that. This is a process by which our sheriff, fire and rescue, planning and zoning, public work, we're all involved in that discussion. It's not, again, it's something we don't look at lightly. We take a lot of concern. So.
I appreciate the reconsideration.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to provide any other information if necessary. I wasn't aware that this was in the works until I received the letter.
And we normally do not send letters when there's changes, but we chose in this situation, given the nature and the removal, to provide that opportunity for feedback. Okay.
Weren't aware and came here because we don't think it needs to be changed.
Thank you.
Yeah, which is why I think it's good to have some more discussion on it. So.
And we did not meet before this, so I was on this side of the issue as well, whether I'd sit with it.
And I'd be happy to share with you the other two emails that we received as well, so that you can kind of see what your neighbors are saying. Yeah.
He's all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we will certainly table that and come back to the board and look at the other situation as well that was addressed. Moving on to item 10B, there is a resolution for we are nearing the end of a 3-year lease for a Toyota Corolla that we've used as a pool vehicle for the township. This actually is the first time we've used the lease option. It's worked out extremely well. We were able to, at that point, trade in 2 vehicles and actually get money back. So we did not have to spend $1, and we had revenue from that when we turned those in. We'd like to proceed with purchasing that Corolla. It has low mileage. It's served us very well. And actually, we built up quite a bit of equity in that. So there is a resolution before the board to authorize that action before January 31st of 2019. So.
I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the purchase of equipment pursuant to Section 505.101 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Second.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Earhart.
Yes, and I'm going to cover the landscape maintenance with some transitions. Old habits are hard to break. I placed this under Public Works, but with the transition to Mr. Luganbuehl, facilities maintenance and events now falls under administration, so it should have been under my portion of the agenda. Essentially, Mark Magna, our facilities manager, is recommending that we take advantage of a renewal clause for a one-year contract with our current landscaper, which is Merkel Landscaping. We did bid this landscaping maintenance project back in 2013. The board accepted landscape bids in 2014, and we had a couple of renewal years available to us. Merkel has done an outstanding job. We have added to the area that they are maintaining, keeping within the requirements that are outlined in the bid process, so we haven't expanded beyond what's allowable in the bidding process. But we're asking the board to consider renewing, again, taking advantage of that clause to renew with Merkel for 2019 landscaping maintenance. There's a motion before you under item 8A.
I move that this board hereby approve renewal of the contract for Merkel Lawn Care Company for the 2019 landscape maintenance project, together with a 10% contingency for a maximum appropriation of $284,101. Further, this board hereby authorizes and directs the Township Administrator, after consultation with the Law Director, to enter into contract with Merkel Lawn Care Company for the 2019 landscape maintenance project.
Second.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item is regarding Hamilton County's multi-hazard mitigation plan. Anderson Township, along with our fellow townships, municipalities, and other stakeholders who have been involved in this plan process for about the last year. What the mitigation plan involves is looking at things that could impact our community, everything from civil disorder, riots, cyber attacks, floods, terrorism, structural failures, sinkholes, wildfires, extreme heat, extreme cold, basically trying to put a list together of every potential hazard with the goal of coming up with a plan that will save lives, protect property, and preserve and protect our environment, our economy, and the essential services and quality of life. We have participated, as I stated, our Fire and Rescue Department has participated in this plan, as have others. The county put together the plan, Hamilton County Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency, with the input of all the various stakeholders. And now I am asking for our board to adopt that multi-hazard mitigation plan.
I move to adopt the Hamilton County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Second.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Thank you. This board has long been involved with the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments. Currently, Mr. Girth is the Anderson Township representative to OKI's Board of Directors, with Mr. Pappas as the alternate. We have been asked to appoint representatives for the coming year, and there is a motion before you, and I would ask for board action.
Do you want to do it? Okay, I'll do it.
Who wants to do it?
He wants to do it.
Oh, he's fine. I move to appoint Josh Girth as Anderson Township's representative to the Board of Directors of the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments, and to appoint
Sure, I'll be the alternate.
D. Stone as alternate.
Second.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes. OKI is a multi-jurisdictional board of every community in the Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky region, and they basically sit on these task force to appropriate where federal money is going to be spent for transportation projects. Now, it is very exciting meetings, and I know you both have been to them. But I will say it's very important, and the reason is because every once in a while they try and do something or sneak something by that we don't like, and so we have to speak up from time to time, which is how we got the sidewalk connection down on Kellogg to continue our trail. And we were just awarded a pretty significant grant. And remind me now what that was for, Steve.
Just over $900,000 for Pattison Road sidewalks.
Pattison, that's right, yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So it is an important thing to be part of, and so I appreciate you guys doing that. Thank you.
The next item is request to renew our membership for 2019 in the Coalition of Large Ohio Urban Townships. It is known as CLOUT, and CLOUT represents over 50 large townships in the state of Ohio. Anderson is the 11th largest township in the state of Ohio. As a large urban township, we have different legislative requests than some of our more rural communities. And CLOUT is comprised, it is a board that is comprised of elected officials and appointed officials that meet quarterly in Columbus. They take into account large township needs. They advocate for us on a legislative side, whether it's recovering some of the dollars that were lost to townships when the state made some changes. And CLOUT also sponsors a legislative breakfast in Columbus that's held in connection with the Ohio Township Association's annual conference, where we usually are able to communicate with over 70 legislators at the state level to tell them face-to-face our stories, what we need to make our communities better, and to advocate for changes. So I would recommend this is a very low-cost option for us. They also provide for our membership dues if we have a situation that becomes litigious that impacts other large townships. They have a fund that we can apply for money to help us support our case. So I would ask for the board's consideration of the motion.
And you are currently what? Or did you just come off?
I stepped down. I was on the CLOUT board for 10 years and chair of the committee for 9 years, and I have stepped down this year.
Well, you did an amazing job, and I want to also say that this this coalition is exactly how you described it, but it's also, it keeps us relevant with the folks up in Columbus, and I can tell you that our previous, or the outgoing administration up in Columbus has not been very kind to townships, and so I am not at all sorry to see him go. But I will say that the legislators and the state reps and the state senators up there, still, a lot of them come from townships, live in townships, have been former township trustees. So we do have some champions up there, and being part of this group is very important. So thank you for all the work that you've done, and
thank you.
We'll continue to drive up to Columbus and remind them that we're here in Southeast Ohio, West Ohio.
Wherever. I
South
move
Ohio.
to authorize membership in the Coalition of Large Ohio Urban Townships, a subcommittee of the Ohio Township Association for the year 2019 in an amount not to exceed $200.
Second.